Hello, welcome to Men's Health Connected on day 2 of Men's Health Week 2023. This week's theme for Men's Health Week is healthy habits. And to celebrate that theme, we have a series of 5 lunchtime webinars covering 5 healthy habits. We're going to be talking this week about connecting, about nutrition, about exercise, about moderating alcohol intake, and today we're going to focus on sleep. So before we begin, I'd like to first acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where we meet from today around Australia. I'm joining you from the land of the First Nations people of the Balai, the Gurang, the Gureng and the Taribalang Munda nations here in central Queensland. I would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So, welcome. If it's your first time with us this week, I know people are joining from all over Australia, some joining in workplaces. I know we've got community centres that are streaming these videos. Some people will be joining from their home. Wherever you're joining us from, you're very welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come and be part of a conversation about some of the healthy habits that men can develop. And this is a really popular topic that we've never really covered before. It's the topic of sleep. And we have with us today Geoff Brearley, who is a registered psychologist with a long-standing clinical interest in sleep disorders and in particular insomnia. Geoff is from the Bayside, Sleep Health, which is in Brisbane, came highly recommended to us by the Australasian Sleep Association when we started looking around for someone to come and talk to us about the importance of sleep on men's health. I'll say no more. Geoff knows himself better than I do and can do a better job of introducing himself. All I'll say is I've been up all night looking forward to this. So I'm hoping to get some good tips about how to make tonight a better night than last night. Geoff, thanks for being here. You're really welcome. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Glenn, and thanks to the forum for inviting me to talk about my favourite topic, and that is sleep and the importance of sleep. It's something we do every 24 hours, or at least should do. The question is, what is the quality of that sleep and what we can do to improve it or maintain it? But what happens when we don't sleep? So I'll just start my screen. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. So I'd like to start off by what I'm going to cover in this topic this afternoon. What is sleep? We all do it, but I'm going to define what it is, why we sleep, what good sleep health is supposed to look like. I'm going to talk about the 2 most common sleep disorders, particularly pertinent to this talk today. There are some 40 or 50 sleep disorders, but the 2 most common ones I'm going to talk about. What happens when we don't sleep? What's the psychological impact? How does it affect us mentally? How does it affect us physically? But not only on an individual level, but on a national level. There is an economic impact of poor sleep. And tying all that together, I'm going to look at a couple of topics of particular interest of areas of men's health as to how sleep affects men's health or how poor sleep affects men's health in a negative way. Now, you may be all very, very familiar with the topic of the 3 pillars of health: sleep, diet, and exercise. Now, I'm wondering if you've ever asked ourselves, do we spend between 7 and 9 hours eating? And the answer is probably not. Unless we are training for the Olympic Games, we probably do not spend between 7 and 9 hours exercising. So why then is it important that we need to focus on 7 to 9 hours of sleep? And the bottom line is, it is the foundation of the other 2 pillars of health. It is so fundamental to every aspect of our general health, males and females, it doesn't matter. We need to have good sleep every night. We have 2 definitions, a historical definition of sleep and the current one. So way back in 1834, there was a Scottish physician by the name of Robert McNeish, and he was probably one of the first people to attempt to define sleep in saying it is the intermediate state between wakefulness and death. So pretty black and white when you think of it that way. Wakefulness regarded as the active state of all the animal and intellectual functions, and death as that of their total suspension. So somewhere in between there was a recognition of, yes, we are aware that we're awake, and then we go to sleep and sort of nothing happens, but then hopefully we wake up again in the morning. So for 1834, it was probably a reasonable, good attempt at defining what sleep is. These days, there is a much more behavioural scientific definition. It's a reversible behavioural state of perceptual disengagement from and unresponsiveness to the environment. I'll just unpack that a little bit. We know when we climb into bed, we put our head on the pillow, we turn out the light, we're aware of that. But as we drift into sleep, suddenly we're not aware of it. It's that disengagement from our perception of being in bed and unresponsiveness to the environment. So there may be a car go past every now and again during the night. We're not going to respond to that as we might notice during the day when we're awake. And of course, there may be a loud thunderstorm. We might wake up to that or maybe not. But generally, we're disengaged from the environment as well. So that's the current definition. But most importantly, it's reversible. Our body, our brain, our circadian system wakes us up from that state in the morning. Just trying to, there we go. We can observe what sleep looks like. We know that our bodies are quiet. We can see someone recognize instantly that they're sleeping. So they're lying still, they're not moving very much, eyes are closed, and we do have to be lying down to sleep properly. We cannot sleep standing up, so we need this what's called postural recumbence, lying down. We can sort of fall asleep in a chair, but it's not comfortable and it's not good sleep. And for those of us who may have needed to travel on international flights, trying to find that sweet spot sitting up in the back of an aircraft is also very, very difficult and doesn't lead to good sleep on a plane. So those three things we can observe about what proper sleep is. We can measure sleep. We can measure it scientifically. Our brain is a very small electrical generator, so it can change its waveforms. It can change its electrical output to indicate whether we're awake or what stages of sleep we're in. Overall, there are two stages: non-rapid eye movement sleep, which is our body rest. We do this non-REM sleep first, plunge into our deep sleep, and nothing much happens. The body is resting, the brain is not much activity. However, it is in that stage that we are likely to be healing. If we've got cuts or bruises or we're ill, that's the time that our body starts repairing itself during sleep. And there's also rapid eye movement sleep, which is our dreaming. And when we're dreaming, the evolution has taken care of our movement. We are paralyzed when we're dreaming, except for our heart, eye, and lung muscles. So otherwise, we will be flailing about all over the place, hitting our significant other next to us, falling out of bed. So our muscles are switched off when we're in our dream state, which is very, very handy to know. We can measure sleep in what it's supposed to look like. Time taken to fall asleep, 10 to 20 minutes. Wake after sleep onset, that's waking during the night. Normally, we shouldn't remember that, although scientifically we do pop into wakefulness quite a few times during the night, but not long enough to remember. So ideally, we have this sensation of going to bed at night, falling asleep and waking up in the morning without having woken during the night. We can measure what's our total time in bed, but within that, what is our sleep time, which gives us a figure of how efficient we are at sleeping. For example, a poor example, if we're in bed for 10 hours, but we're only asleep for 5, we're only 50% good at sleeping, but that also means that we're 50% good at being awake in bed, which is not what we want. So ideally, we're targeting 85 to 90% of that time in bed is ideally spent asleep. There's no one particular reason to why we sleep. However, combined, these three reasons make sense. As I mentioned before, our non-REM sleep, restoring our body every 24 hours, shutting it down, repairing, restoring, recharging for the next day. Rapid eye movement sleep, our dreaming, may bear no resemblance to what we are needing to remember that's important for the day. What needs to go into long-term memory? What important things do we need to remember? It's also a time where we can spend some time problem solving without being aware of it, because the brain resources are available to find alternative pathways to solving the problem that we're stuck on. You might have experienced where you have something you're wrestling with at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night and you just can't find the solution. You wake up the next morning, all of a sudden, bang, there it is. The answer's right in front of you, problem solved. That's occurred while we've been asleep. There's also some general physical cleansing of the body, cleansing of the brain that's going on while we're asleep. And our brain resources are available to do these tasks because our brain is too busy during our waking day. Now, here's the thing. Sleep is an involuntary behavior. If you fight sleep, you will lose. Eventually, it might be 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you will fall asleep. We can time to the second when we have our first mouthful of food for the day. We can time to the second when we walk out the door to our first bit of exercise. But what we cannot do with sleep is say, I will fall asleep at 10 o'clock or 9:30 or whatever particular time that is. Sleep needs to come to us. So we have to make provision for that to happen in the lead up, a few hours before sleep. Sleep is essential for our survival. It's a biological necessity that's not negotiable. But overall, we have found through studies of science around sleep, it is essential for all aspects of our health and well-being. And thankfully, sleep research is always ongoing. Now, each and every one of us should have an opportunity to sleep every night. Now, that may be between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. So there's your opportunity. It doesn't mean that you're going to sleep all that time, but somewhere in that opportunity to sleep, which we need to make opportunity and not intrude on it, somewhere in there should be our ideal sleep time. As I mentioned, the normal healthy range for sleep is 7 to 9 hours. But the question is, do we have the ability to match our sleep needs? What happens when we can no longer sleep the sleep we need because something else is going on? We've lost the ability. That's what happens when our sleep systems break down a little bit. We can't sleep to what we need. So it's only in recent times that good sleep health has actually been defined. We've known for a long time what good diet looks like, fruit, vegetables, a range of meats, fish, and so on. We know what good exercise is supposed to look like, 30 minutes a day or 150 minutes a week, running, cycling, walking, whatever it is we do for our physical exercise every day. But it's only in recent years, in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, that researchers in the US have come up and defined what good sleep health is supposed to look like. And it looks like these 6 dimensions. We need to have a regular bedtime every day, say a half-hour window where we will make sure that we are thinking about going to sleep. It's generally a window where we get that natural sleepy falling asleep time in the evening. Now, that might be for some people 9:30 till 10 or 10 till 10:30, what it is, whatever that is. But it does need to be regulated. Now, sure, you can have a late night. That's fine, so long as next night you get back to your good sleep time routine. Simple question to ask ourselves in the morning. Are we satisfied with our sleep? Have we had a good night's sleep? Simple question. Are we alert during the day? Can we get through our day concentrating, working, managing our tasks without the daytime sleepiness attached? And if we're struggling a bit, then there's something wrong with our sleep. Is the timing of our sleep in an appropriate time? Are we sleeping at nighttime? Or do we have a shift in our clock? Maybe we're not falling asleep till 2 o'clock and waking up at 10 in the morning. Yes, that might be a good sleep, but it's at the wrong time of the 24 hours. I mentioned before sleep efficiency. Are we good at sleeping when we are in bed? And what is the duration of that sleep? Hopefully it's in that 7 to 9 hour range. So we have this acronym, Are You Sated? Regularity, satisfaction, alertness, timing, efficiency, and duration of our sleep. Now, any of you out there, if you can answer yes to all of those questions, that's great. Chances are you are a good sleeper. But if not, which one of those is missing for you and which one needs the work? Simple maths. Good sleep health equals good memory, good concentration, energy, mood, skills, coping skills, and good physical health. But if you have poor sleep health and do not sleep well, pretty much none of the above. I want to talk about the 2 most common of sleep disorders. There are some 30 or 40 listed in the classification of sleep disorders, but these 2 are important leading up to the topics I'm going to talk about men's health in this talk. We have insomnia. Now, that is my area of clinical interest. How to fix insomnia, get people sleeping well again, and what is it that's cognitively going through your mind at night that keeps you awake. 2 types, acute insomnia, that is a bad night's sleep, and 100% of the population will have a bad night's sleep at any given time. It affects all of us, no exceptions. Acute insomnia, hopefully we let that pass. Hopefully the next night or the night after that, we get back into our regular sleep routine. Chronic insomnia, however, is the much more long-term problem, which I'll define in a moment. We also have the medical sleep disorders obstructive sleep apnea and central sleep apnea are the most common ones. Now, obstructive sleep apnea is where your airway is actually physically blocked or closes while you're asleep, despite the fact that your lung muscles are still trying to breathe. Generally occurs a lot associated with obesity. If you're lying on your back, the weight of your skin, your neck might slowly close over the airway, and your body detects that and tells you to wake up and breathe, wake up and breathe, wake up and breathe. So you can never get fully good sleep. If you have obstructive sleep apnea, your body is continually telling you to wake up. You might wake up gasping, coughing, choking. Central sleep apnea, less common, but a much more serious problem is that the actual breathing muscles have a problem. So your muscles are not breathing the way they should, are not operating the way they should to help you breathe. But obstructive sleep apnea is the more common of those. So insomnia, we may have all experienced this. Trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, which is waking up during the night, or you are waking up too early. You might wake up at 3 o'clock and not be able to get back to sleep, and you've got to get up at 6 o'clock to go to work. That is early morning waking. That's a problem. Now, you can have a combination of these three main symptoms, but overall, your daytime performance is affected. It causes impairment to your daily functioning. If this is occurring 3 nights a week for 3 months or more, that is generally the definition of chronic insomnia. It occurs despite the opportunity for sleep. So you've made that opportunity available. You're still not sleeping. It's not better explained by another sleep disorder, and it isn't attributable to the effects of a substance, drugs, medication, alcohol, and so on. In other words, your sleep system has got the wobbles and it's broken. There's another way of looking at insomnia, and we need to have a quiet mind in order to let sleep come to us. So insomnia is a state of what's called hyperarousal. We have a busy mind. We're thinking about everything that at a time of night where we shouldn't be thinking about it. You know, there might be lots going on at work, lots going on at home, all the major things that are keeping us busy, busy, busy. We can't switch off our mind. So another definition is the failure to inhibit wakefulness. We can't switch off. We need to have that relaxation time before bedtime. We need to quieten the mind at the end of every day. And subsequently, we can no longer have the ability to match that sleep need. The primary recommended treatment for insomnia is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. It is a structured program for 4 to 6 weeks, getting you back on track. It is making behavioral changes and addressing your issues, your thoughts, your cognitions about sleep. And it is the proven gold standard worldwide. So CBTI is the main treatment for insomnia. Now, obstructive sleep apnea. This is a breathing problem. This is a mechanical body medical problem. There's a couple of different criteria here that can be met. Sleepiness, fatigue during the day, non-restorative sleep, you wake up, you're still tired. You may have insomnia symptoms as well as obstructive sleep apnea. As I mentioned before, waking, holding your breath, gasping, choking. That's a problem. Your bed partner may observe this. You may not be aware of this, but you may not observe where someone else can. The fact you're snoring, you're stopping your breathing for 10 or 20 seconds. This is a combination of some breathing difficulty when you are asleep. And you may also have a comorbid illness, or you may have a physical illness, heart disease, stroke, diabetes. All of the big major medical problems may be associated with these. Excuse me. It's also fair to say that sleep disturbance and these physical illnesses can be dual causality. They can be bidirectional. So this is where sleep is combined with these conditions or poor sleep. It's really important to still address the sleep as well as having the medical conditions treated. You can go and have what's called a PSG done, which you go into a sleep center, or you can have a sleep study done at home. You have a helmet with all electrodes attached to various parts of your head to measure the brain activity. And when you are asleep, if you can sleep with that equipment, there's other bits of equipment around on you as well. The PSG is measuring the number of times you stop breathing or there is a respiratory disruption. Now, maybe you are by yourself, but you know you're tired and you don't have anybody to observe your sleep. The other criteria, if you did get a referral to a sleep center or have a sleep study done, then if you have 15 or more obstructive respiratory events per hour, that is a diagnosis of OSA. The recommended treatment for that, and maybe some of you do have OSA and you are familiar with the continuous positive airway pressure device, or CPAP device. It's a mask or some probes that are providing continuous air into your airway while you are asleep to stop that obstruction occurring. It does take some getting used to. But it is, again, the recommended treatment for OSA. It's physically wearing a mask or wearing a breathing device, providing that oxygen and airflow into your airway at night. Now, I mentioned comorbidity. And very commonly, depression and anxiety are associated with sleep disturbance. You may have depression first or anxiety first. You may develop a sleep problem, but you can also have a sleep problem first, which leads into depression or anxiety. So there's some comorbid bidirectionality there. PTSD is very common to have a sleep disturbance, bipolar, substance use disorders, and so on. All of these are generally associated with sleep disturbances or are a comorbid symptom. Now, what happens during the day? Fatigueness, tired, grumpiness, poor memory, poor concentration. We are also likely to engage in risk-taking behaviours, which isn't good. We might do things more risky than we otherwise would have had we had good sleep. So we might act more impulsively. That's a risk. And of course, for someone who cannot sleep for a long period of time, there is an increased risk of suicidal ideation. So there's some daytime impairments. The other one, importantly, is drowsy driving. That is a major, major problem. Falling asleep at the wheel, microsleeps are they called. If you fall asleep for 1 second and you wake up again after 1 second and you are still in the same lane, it is attributable to nothing else but pure luck that you are still able to drive. We often hear of tragic accidents on the highway, middle of the day even, where a truck has gone off the road, single vehicle or a car. It's so sad when that tragedy occurs, may endanger or affect other people as well. There is a possibility that was caused by the driver falling asleep at the wheel due to poor sleep. Again, what can happen? We can develop, if we have poor sleep, we can develop obesity, cardiovascular illness, diabetes, stroke. These are all the big, major physical illnesses that can occur. And so if we are better sleepers, we are less likely to develop these. It's not a guarantee, but it certainly helps. If we have good sleep, we will cross over and have good physical health. Poor sleep, then we're at risk of these major conditions. Back in 2017, there was a major study done on sleep, commissioned by the Sleep Health Foundation. A Sleep on the Job, it was called. It had some really startling but significant findings, and awareness of sleep became apparent. 4 out of 10 Australian adults suffer from some sort of inadequate sleep. 7.4 million, you could say, is the combined population of Sydney and Melbourne. That's a lot of people. 1.1 million with sleep disorders, insomnia and sleep apnea. 2.5 million with health problems related to sleep. And over 3, nearly 4 million people who routinely fail to get enough sleep, regardless of the reason. That's a lot of people with a sleep problem in this country. So this highlighted the impact of poor sleep in this country. There's some statistics there of 394 deaths caused in this study in 2016 and 17 while driving a vehicle, or from industrial accidents. Let's not forget machinery in factories, building sites, driving large vehicles, mining trucks and so on. And then the remaining deaths were due to those other health issues that I mentioned directly related to poor sleep, heart disease and diabetes. That is the cost. In 2016-17, all of that cost $66 billion in lost money. When we're talking about poor sleep at work, people in the workplace, we have obviously absenteeism. That's a cost. We have presentism. What's called presentism, which means you're at work, but you're really not functioning or producing the work that you're supposed to be doing because you're constantly tired, you can't concentrate, you've got poor memory and so on. All of these costs were added up and analysed in this particular study. $66 billion. When I first read this report, I tried to comprehend what that looked like. How many suburbs of houses that is, or what does that look like? But every now and again, the Australian stock market does a big correction. The prices of all stocks fall down, and they might hear on the news that the stock market lost $40 billion today, or $60 billion, or something like that. That's a sort of the level of scale of this inadequate sleep cost Australia in 2016-17. The report then went on to make some good recommendations, raising the awareness of good sleep, educating people about blue light. We've got these lovely smart devices that we use every day. We should not be using them at night time. Promoting continuous research, and also a responsibility for employers, for those who have shift workers on their staff, making sure that their shifts are as best they can be, but providing the best rest in the meantime. Shift workers are at high risk of having sleep disturbance. They're just not sleeping at the times they're supposed to be, and they're being asked to work at the times that they're supposed to be asleep. So there's a lot of recommendations came out of that report, and hopefully many of them are being implemented. Subsequent report in April 2021 had a look at those revised figures. As you can see there is still a big dollar cost in terms of to the Australian economy regarding poor sleep directly. Non-financial costs, loss of wellbeing, $36.6 billion. And the interesting figure there at the bottom, this represents 3.2% of total Australian burden of disease for the year. That is a lot. When you think about it, sleep is something we do. Maybe we take it for granted. But when we put it in significant figures of this, of what the costs are of poor sleep and sleep disorders, that brings it to our attention. Okay. I thought I'd focus on particular aspects of men's health, things particular to us, and how this poor sleep affects us. I found a great literature review written in 2019, which summarised a lot of the information out there about men's health issues, such as erectile dysfunction, the main one, and lower urinary tract symptoms, hypogonadal symptoms, all which have a linear relationship with sleep. So this was a research paper, a literature review from 2019. And I've picked out some of the parts of this review for topics to think about in terms of men's health. Nearly 50% of males experience some erectile dysfunction at some stage. In particular, another particular study in this review found that males over 67 years of age with nocturnal hypoxemia, now that is when your oxygen levels in your blood drop. One of the major causes of that is obstructive sleep apnea. You're not breathing, your oxygen levels in your blood drop. Now, they are 1.69 times at higher risk of moderate or complete erectile dysfunction than those who don't have OSA. Males without OSA are much less likely to experience that erectile dysfunction, and adherence to CPAP use, the main treatment for OSA. If you use that CPAP device for more than 4 hours each night, and you should be using it for your entire sleep for the night, gives significant improvement in your erectile functioning. Now, it's very common with CPAP users, especially when they're getting used to the device. It's a big change to have to sleep with some sort of mask on, some sort of nasal tubes for the airflow to be allowed into your airway. It's quite common if you do need to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, you might wear the CPAP device for the first half of the night. When you go back to bed afterwards, you might think, no, I won't put it back on. So you're only getting 4 hours out of 7 or 8 effective use of the CPAP device. It is designed to be used throughout the entire nights of sleep. So it is important to get motivated, get into a good habit. If you are going to the bathroom in the night and you have OSA, to put that mask back on again to complete a healthy night's sleep. There is an interesting assessment that can be done to determine erectile dysfunction, the International Index of ED. It's a 15-item questionnaire. And basically the scoring of that questionnaire, the lower the scores, the more severe is the problem. And shift workers. Now, shift work is a separate topic altogether in terms of poor sleep. For those who shift work, and defined in this paper as starting before 7 o'clock in the morning, or starting your shift after 6 o'clock at night, or if you have a rotating shift or a random shift, which is the worst kind of shift work. If you have more than a month's excessive sleepiness during the day and impairment of social and occupational activities, you have more severe ED scores as measured by the IIEF than those who don't. Now, insomnia also plays a part in erectile dysfunction. If you have a high risk of insomnia, you have significantly lower scores, which is more severe than those with a low risk of insomnia. And the paper goes on to mention that there are further studies that confirm this correlation. So already we're getting a picture of poor sleep, whether it's OSA or insomnia, affecting male health issues. Now, one of the main lower urinary tract symptoms, which covers a lot of aspects of our male anatomy associated with benign prostate hypertrophy or enlarged prostate. It's quite common that us mere males need to go to the bathroom every night, in the middle of the night sometimes. Now, that is sleep disturbance anyway. Question is, are we going back to bed after the bathroom and falling asleep straight away? So we might only be awake for 5 minutes or so. But if not, that can lead to more longer periods of wakefulness, which we don't want in the middle of the night. So one of these studies in this paper talked about over 5,000 males with a diagnosis aspect of LUTS with nocturia, going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, always or usually reported significantly more tiredness than males with only daytime urinary problems. Once again, sleep is one of these factors that's causing this lack of sleep, causing this extra tiredness in this particular survey group, where we do, unfortunately, have to get up and go to the bathroom in the night. Infertility is a particular topic I wanted to mention, and this particular part of this study ties in with some research done by a female researcher in the US who I met a few years ago in Philadelphia, whose focus of study was infertility in females with poor sleep. And her paper particularly mentioned and analysed all the bodily functions that were going on in the female body and similar functions that goes on in males' bodies while we are asleep in order to promote our health. And she found that if any of those, or many of those chemical functions, hormonal functions that are going on when we're sleeping are disturbed too much, it can lead to infertility in women. That I found fascinating. And so what I found in this paper here that I'm presenting, the details in this paper that I'm using today, very important for males as well. So males with less than 6 hours sleep or more than 9 hours sleep, so it's an inverted U curve, if you like, had a higher risk of infertility than those males who have 7 to 9 hours of good sleep. So too little sleep, understandable, but interestingly, too much sleep can lead to higher risk of infertility. And we know the recommended range of good sleep for anybody is 7 to 9 hours. On that topic, there is a separate sleep disorder called hypersomnolence, which is more than 9 hours sleep and it's unrefreshing. For some reason, some people do have this hypersomnolence, sleeping too much. It is a major problem. Again, it interferes with their daytime functioning. It is a separate sleep disorder. That too can be treated. So we do have this fairly interesting window of 7 to 9 hours of good sleep, which is going to help us across the board, especially in the area of infertility. It can be affected if we're not sleeping the right number of hours. I'd like you to think about right now, have a think about your own sleep at this moment. How good is it? How well do you sleep? Have a think about that. Hopefully all of these links and research and associations bringing this together in terms of men's health issues, and just a few of them, by the way, relate back to sleep. So what can we do about this? Let's come back to what that good sleep health looks like. Do we have a schedule where we're getting that little bit sleepy feeling along at the same time every night or within 30 minutes? We need to establish some sort of regular time we start to prioritize sleep. Again, in that window of 9:30 till 10 or 10 till 10:30. Waking up and rising at the same time every morning, regardless of how much sleep we've had. What happens is we wake up, we open the blinds, we let the light in for the day. That tells our body clock, our circadian system, we've started our day. The body clock then starts to release all the energy, all the neurotransmitters, all the hormones we need to get us energized for the day. Same time every day as best we can. The body, and sleep especially, loves routine. In the evening after dinner, we don't need to be on our phones as far as reading screen time, iPads, smartphones. We don't need that. We need to switch that off. The light emitted from those screens is actually related to the light that inhibits that lovely stuff that comes out in our brain every night called melatonin. That's the stuff that makes us feel sleepy, and that's what keeps us asleep. If we switch that off, as it is cleverly switched off by daylight, if we're reading late into the night on our phones, the melatonin is not flowing properly. So we need to switch off those devices. Any lights you don't need around the house after dinner, turn them off, although that can be problematic when you have teenage kids. They often leave the lights on. Complete your meal at least 2 hours before bedtime. We need that length of time for our body to digest our food properly so that we're not going to bed on a stomach with undigested food. That could wake us up anyway, and we feel pretty poorly in the middle of the night if we've eaten too late before bed. No caffeine or caffeine products at least 7 hours before sleep. Coffee can hang around in the body. Half the amount of coffee can still be in our body 6 or 7 hours later. So we really don't want to be drinking coffee late into the evening. Certainly finishing off our alcohol intake after dinner at dinner time as well. Essentially, what's going into our bodies at dinner time should be gone from our bodies or well and truly processed from our bodies by the time we go to bed. Now, here's the thing about quietening the mind. Unwinding time, playing with the kids, watching TV, listening to music, doing some meditation, some yoga, pleasant conversation with significant others, all reading books, all in the name of quietening that brain down from our very busy daytime activities are all important to enhance that letting sleep come to us. The bedroom environment is no exception. No TV in the bedroom. We shouldn't be watching TV in bed, as pleasant as that is in the middle of winter. We are telling our brains that it's okay to be in bed and be awake if we're doing that. Same as reading a book in bed or doing our emails in bed. That is complete opposite of what we're supposed to be doing when we are in bed. That is sleeping. Meals in bed. Of course, we need a comfortable mattress. We need a very, very dark bedroom. We don't want light intruding while we're asleep. So blackout curtains are ideal. We also need a cool bedroom. Around 18 degrees is the best environmental temperature for falling asleep, because when we do, our heart rate drops, our breathing rate drops, and our temperature does start to drop. It's part of thermal regulation of our body while we're asleep. For that temperature drop to occur, we need a cool bedroom to start with. That is probably the best reason to explain why you cannot sleep in summertime. If your bedroom is way too hot, and we've all experienced hot summers, trying to sleep in the middle of summer is a problem. But we need to have cooling air conditioning fans to get that temperature down to around about 18 degrees in our bedroom environment to enhance us falling asleep. So I hope that's covered off on some of the aspects of men's health that are affected, sleep in general, but particularly around men's health. So we know we have a structure now for what good sleep health is supposed to look like. Regularity of sleep, satisfaction with our sleep, alertness during the day, timing of our sleep, efficiency of our sleep, and the duration of our sleep. We've had a quick look at the psychological, physical impact, economic impact of our sleep, and how some of these aspects of the most common sleep disorders, insomnia and obstructive sleep apnea, can affect men's health, in particular men's health issues. And hopefully you have a better idea now of what you can do at home to enhance your own sleep hygiene every night. Each of us every night has an appointment with sleep. What happens when we miss an appointment? There are consequences. Historical, famous people in history have known about good sleep long before sleep science or behavioral sleep medicine was around. The man who's credited with inventing just about everything, Leonardo da Vinci, recognized that a well-spent day brings happy sleep. And he was certainly a busy man. As you can see, other famous figures in history, I particularly like the second last one. People who say they sleep like a baby usually don't have one. It's a common thing in our English language. Oh, I slept like a baby. What? You woke up every 2 hours, you needed a feed, and you needed to go to the toilet? Very common thing, slept like a baby. Sure, after 12 months, we hope our babies are sleeping all the way through. So history has known about good sleep for a long time. I'd like to leave you with a few take-home thoughts. What can you, individually, what can each and every one of you do behaviorally at home, after dinner, your after dinner sleep routines, that's going to start making an improvement to your sleep? Do you need to switch off your mobile phone late in the evening? Why not? Please do. It will help. We need to quieten that mind, as I said. So have a think about your sleep behaviours after dinner leading up to sleep. Remember, sleep is an involuntary behaviour. We have to have it come to us. If you do have any of the men's health issues that I've mentioned and you are referred to a urology specialist, talk about your sleep. Your urologist is certainly going to be interested in how he can fix your physical problem. But as I've shown today, the research tells us that if we have a sleep problem, that's certainly interfering with those conditions. And if you do have a sleep problem in general, whether it's insomnia or obstructive sleep apnea, you can seek treatment and these things can be fixed. If they are, your overall health will benefit from it for sure. Second last one, lack of sleep is only bad if you have to drive or think or talk or move. Pretty much everything is affected by poor sleep in our daily existence. And Dr. William Dement was the founding father of sleep medicine during the 20th century. He lived to the very ripe age of 92 years old. He passed away a few years ago. He is credited with saying, "You are not healthy unless your sleep is healthy." And having lived to the ripe old age of 92, it's probably fair to say that not only did he walk the talk, but he probably slept the sleep as well. I've just got a list of references here that I've used in this presentation today. Thank you very much for your attention about sleep and happy to take any questions.
That's fantastic, Geoff. You've covered so much information there in really such a short period of time. We're already getting, I've got about 4 or 5 questions sort of stacked up for you before you even assert my own privilege as chair to chuck in a couple of my own first.
Sure.
Just a reminder to everyone who's listening, if you want to ask a question, you can't ask by putting your hand up. You're going to have to type a question. So you want to go to the chat box, type in a question, and if we've got time, we'll make sure it's asked. Make a note there of Geoff's contact details. Quick practical question. Someone was asking if you would share the slides. Is that something you would do if they contacted you?
Yes, happy to do that, or I can send them to you, whichever way it's going to be easiest to get them out there if you so wish.
That's great. So a quick technical note there. Just a first thought then from me is, you some great data there on the, troubling data on the long-term impacts of poor sleep, long-term impacts on weight, long-term impacts on chronic disease. Have you got any sort of thoughts on what the short-term impacts are that lead to that? My observation would be when I'm tired, I don't eat as well. And therefore, I see that ongoingly there's a the risk of increased weights.
That's a good question, and this is where you could put this into that risky categories. I'm too tired to eat, or I'm not hungry, or I couldn't be bothered, or if you're a regular exerciser, I don't want to go to the gym today. Very easy for that to creep into our daily routine. But of course, the problem is, does that become chronic? How motivated are you to get back on track? Now, often, you might feel really tired. You've had a busy week. You feel really tired. I often see people, I'll do this or I'll do that when I feel better. The thing is, if you've got a good exercise routine or a good eating routine, how about you jump back into your routine and guess what will happen? You will feel better. Okay. So the sleep, it's a two-way thing. Keep that 3 pillars of health as best you can for yourself. It's important not to neglect one or neglect the other one. Really stay on track.
What they are, please, for those who've got short-term memories.
Sorry, what was that?
Remind us what they are for those who've got short-term memories.
Sleep, diet, and exercise.
Great.
They're the ones. Excellent. 3 pillars of health.
There you go. We're covering all of those this week, so we're covering all bases. A sort of more general question. I'm sort of pulling out a little bit in terms of we look at men's health not just in terms of those really important conditions that are unique to men that you focused on, but also in more of a sort of social context as well. So a couple of thoughts. I was interested on the data. 2 questions on the data. Do you have any sort of inkling? You said about 7 million. 1 in 4.
It's basically 4 out of 10 Australians, adults, have a sleep problem of some description or affected by poor sleep. 7.4
major gender difference.
Sorry, what was that?
there a major gender difference, men and women?
Look, it's interesting. Some of those individual conditions, women are more prone to insomnia, but men are more prone to obstructive sleep apnea. So there is a mix of prevalence across both genders. The fact that it's that huge number, that's what the impacting figure was.
Across
the board. That is so many people who have a sleep problem.
So essentially,
I will add this in. Look, the 20th and 21st century may have something to do with this. We are more bombarded every day with instant information, whether it's instant news, instant feeds, instant everything we can read on social media, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And we're expected to do some sort of processing with all of that. Have we lost our ability to filter that out and say, no, look, I'm going to look at that at the end of the day, or, we've got this instant world that we live in now. Now that's great. The technology has evolved us that way, but we've really got to still focus on what's important to us. What don't I need to look at? What can I really keep focused on what I'm doing to maintain my own health? It's not a selfish attitude. It's an important one to just set aside, rearrange, and really just sort of, take care of ourselves, number one, in all aspects.
Right. Okay, I've got loads more, but I'm going to make sure we pick up some of the audience questions as well.
There's a lot in there I can see.
Yeah, it's all about me and you. So there was that great quote, anyone who slept says they slept like a baby, obviously never had a baby. We had a question from a frustrated and tired dad who said, what on earth do you do when you have he put it beautifully, a low sleep needs infant? So two years, he says, and the baby's not, toddler's not sleeping well. Obviously, it's impacting the adults in the family.
Of course, that's very common. Look, generally, as far as baby sleep goes, the baby's entered this outside world that we live in. The babies do take anything up to 12 months or maybe longer to get used to even the concept of night or day. The infant sleep is generally around 16 hours a day, but of course, that could be at any time, daytime or nighttime. When we're looking at, and now I don't do treatment for children and babies, but it's important that quiet time for babies happens as well in the lead up to their bedtime. And the same right up through toddlers and kids. If kids can learn that they need to quieten down before bed, that's going to be an important step. If there is a problem with babies in particular up to 2 years of old, it needs to be ascertained perhaps by a paediatrician that there's no medical problem causing that sleep disturbance. However, there is a program for parents for new babies, and especially if the question's coming from someone first-time parent, where parents can divide the night up into 2 shifts for themselves so that each of them are getting 5 hours continuous sleep as best as possible. So one parent can be on duty, if you like, and be listening out for the baby. Then halfway through the night, the two can change over and the other one gets a decent sleep and the other one takes over the baby care. It's a protective program for new parents. It's been around for a little while. It's not well publicised, but it can be done if the parents work together of organising their own sleep in shifts to help get through every night while the baby's sleep is disturbed.
Oh, great advice, Geoff. So this is a great question, but a tough one for the bloke who's dealing with it. But I imagine something that would be relevant to quite a few people. Sometimes I find myself waking at night and then I start dwelling on the day's problems, almost fixating on them, and this will keep me awake. Do you have any advice?
When we are awake in the middle of the night, the brain is great at giving us something to think about. Oh, you're awake, are you? Think about this, or think about that. And that's happened to all of us. So, and of course, when we're in that twilight sleepy zone, it suddenly seems to become the most important thing in the world that needs to be solved right at that moment. And of course, we wake up the next morning and think, oh, really? I just want to get on with my day. A very clever thing you can do before you go to bed, about 30 minutes before you go to bed, you can get out a piece of paper and you can just jot down what's on my mind. What are the important things that are happening? Is it a big meeting with the boss tomorrow? Is it asking for a pay rise? Is it something to do with the kids' schooling? These are the things that are likely to latch on and keep us awake. If we can write down bullet points on a piece of paper before we go to bed, we are effectively doing a brain dump, if you like. So you want to go emptying the trash of all that daytime stuff that's worrying us, write it on a piece of paper, get it out of your brain. All you do with that piece of paper afterwards is just set it aside. It is not a to-do list. It is just, I'm transferred all those thoughts onto a piece of paper. I think I've covered everything that's worrying me. If you do happen to wake up in the night and think of one of those things, you can say, yep, thanks, brain, I've already written it down. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. Yep, off you go. Yep, I've written that down. So it takes some practice to get into that habit, but can be very useful before you go to bed to jot down what's on your mind.
That's great advice, Geoff. Thank you.
Now, it's not to say the problem's gone away. The problem was, whatever it is still there tomorrow morning. That's fine. But right now, it's important that I meet my appointment with sleep. So jot it down beforehand. Yeah,
we're dealing with the coping with the problem, not the problem, but therefore we're trying to get rid of another problem, which is I'm not waking up with enough sleep.
Exactly.
So I can deal with all the problems that I've got to face tomorrow. Yeah.
And tonight, write it down again on another piece of paper if you need to. Set it aside. Yeah. Get into that good brain dump habit.
Right. Okay. Now, here's someone who's asking for a friend, apparently. What are the, and I'm going to add to this question a little bit. What are the pros and cons of using pills to break a pattern of bad sleep? And we could add, what are the pros and cons of, using drink or other methods that are short-term unhealthy? What are the pros and cons of that?
Okay. So I'll address that alcohol one first. Alcohol, if we drink too much alcohol before sleep, it's having more of a sedative effect in putting us to sleep. So we're falling asleep because of the alcohol, not necessarily falling asleep naturally. And more often than not, we will wake up after a couple of hours after the effects of that alcohol has worn off. Of course, we might have a thumping head and thirsty and dry. So it means the effect of the alcohol has worn off. It's not necessarily being good sleep. So as I mentioned earlier, alcohol use, keep it to dinner time. It's not an ideal thing to do. Now, medically, sleeping tablets, that is the realm of the GP. So psychologists, we can't prescribe or advise otherwise. But sleeping tablets, they can be good in the short term, and certainly would be in the short term. The doctors can prescribe the right amount of sleeping tablets. Now, sleeping tablets in general put us to sleep. They don't necessarily keep us asleep. So they can certainly help with getting us to sleep quickly. The question is, do you want to be on sleeping tablets for the rest of your life? The answer is probably not. So we're looking more at having that medication to help us, but looking at our sleep behaviours and sleep routines that are going to restore good sleep naturally, good healthy patterns. It does take a while. There is no one night instant fix for sleep. If people are dedicated to fixing their sleep, it will take a few weeks for it to kick back in. Each and every one of us has a part of our brains knows how to sleep. It's just some of us have forgotten how to. So it's changing the behaviours to get insomnia under control, given that there's no medical reason why you can't sleep. So right. That's the realm of the area for the GP to discuss with the patient.
Got a couple of one's a comment, one's a question from blokes with their own sleeping challenges that they're dealing with. So Dave shared with everyone. I have sleep apnea and I use a CPAP machine. Yep. I find that when I return from going to the toilet in the night, sometimes it's hard to go back to sleep as the wife is snoring. Thanks for telling everyone about that, Dave. I'm sure she'll be delighted.
He's got to win one somewhere.
That's right. It's a safe space. Sometimes he says he has to put on headphones with music like white noise, but he also finds reading a good way to sleep. It's just a comment, but if you want to bounce off any of that, you're welcome.
So if you find you do have that problem, have to go to the bathroom, come back to bed, if you're awake after 30 minutes, it's like you realize, oh my God, sleep has left the building, and I'm awake for 30 minutes or more. It is a good idea to get up again for 30 minutes, go to the dining room table, sit down and read something incredibly boring. So, we've got to break the habit of being in bed and being awake. Find something incredibly boring, an old book that you don't like or a magazine. Boredom will reintroduce sleepiness fairly quickly. After that 30 minutes, back to bed, lights out as best you can. You don't want to maintain the wakefulness in bed for any longer than you need to.
Okay. Understood. Yeah.
So give it about 30 minutes. We sort of know how long 30 minutes is, or if it's that feeling, sleep's gone for a little while, get up, minimal light, find something boring to read, then back to bed after 30 minutes.
Right. We've got 5 minutes, Geoff. If you're happy to keep going, we'll keep
keep going.
Right.
Make the most of the 5. Yes.
Yeah. This is the most technical one. See if you, but it might be relevant to other people too. So, and perhaps you could explain part of this question to me too. So, I have NPH, which is normal pressure hydrocephalus. I think I've got that right. This is from no, it's an anonymous question from one of the blokes online, and a VP shunt. So, I'll need to know what that is. He says, I rarely get more than 6 hours of sleep. Is there a possible connection? So just explain what a VP shunt is first, if you know, and then you don't.
Not familiar with that. That's a doctor question. Yeah.
Right. Okay, thanks. So a couple of sort of more alternative ones here we'll finish off with then. So we talked about drugs and pills and alcohol. Someone's asked a question, what about things like melatonin or supplements? Vitamin D supplements are mentioned. Are they useful? I mean, you could add, other things like some of the herbal remedies, like I'm trying to think what we use in teas and things like that. So chamomile tea, let's say, but there's other ones.
Yep. Okay. Firstly, melatonin. You can obtain prescription melatonin. It's generally 2 milligrams. Now, our brain, as I understand it, produces melatonin. It comes out at night, as we know. It's generally 0.5 to 1 milligram. So you can talk to this with either your GP, or you can get melatonin, 2 milligram melatonin over the counter now at your pharmacist. And it's generally, again, another short term, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, just to help kickstart your own melatonin or to supplement it. Because it's a natural product, the brain produces it anyway. We don't need more than about 2 milligrams. It can be useful to have that, and providing you have got a good sleep routine, bedtime routine going. You do need to take melatonin anywhere 40, 50, 60 minutes before bedtime, but that bedtime has to be regular for it to work effectively. You can use melatonin if you want to. Again, seek advice from your GP or your pharmacist. As far as the other things, chamomile tea, look, that could be down to an individual. If it works for you, fine, give it a try. A lot of those teas are herbal teas. Nothing wrong with herbal tea or herbs in general. That's good for the body as well. But that's more of an individual level. There's no, I can't recommend one way or the other whether you would or you wouldn't. Give it a try. See if it works. Hold it for a week. See if it works for a week. See if there's any improvement. One night at a time, chopping and changing, probably you're not going to get much effect, but hold it if you're going to try something, hold it for a week and see if there's any improvement.
Right. Now, I love this question. This comes from the Jungian wing of the men's health sector, and it's got me thinking about some of the recurring dreams I have at busy times like this during Men's Health Week. Can you say any more about dreaming, a bit more on its significance, particularly recurring dreams for this questioner?
So recurring dreams are interesting. Now, dream research is a completely separate area. What we do know about dreams, it's like if I can put a metaphor, it's like a filing system that the brain will sort of line up things to think about. It may not necessarily be the most important thing that's going on at the moment. It might be some unresolved issues, because remember, dreaming is not only memory consolidation, but also our problem solving, part of our problem solving ability. If something is recurring, it would be reasonable to say that something's not been resolved. The brain is trying to solve some problem if it's a recurring dream. Now, obviously, worst case example is someone who's exhibited trauma, serious trauma, whether, cyclone, bushfire, or human against human trauma. That is the worst kind. That is going to put a huge spike in your sleep, and the brain's going to revisit that and try and solve it. So trauma needs to be treated as a separate entity, but certainly occurs in dreams. Generally, if there's nightmares associated or something like that, maybe some sort of underlying anxiety that may not have been identified. But for something to recurring, it makes sense that the brain's trying to solve something it hasn't been able to solve for a while.
Gotcha. Right. That's what
dream research is another field, and quite a fascinating one as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure we could have a session, and we'd have a lot of panelists from our sector who'd be really interested in taking part in that conversation.
The thing is with dreams, I often hear of people, I don't remember my dreams, or I don't dream. The fact is you do. If you don't remember them, life must be okay. Things are processing along pretty well. It's when you remember something vivid, maybe a vivid dream, something interesting might have happened that your brain's trying to make sense of during that dream cycle.
Great. Just one quick last one.
Sure.
Any thoughts on napping? Someone's saying, I seem to get enough sleep, but then sometimes I sleep in the day. Is that a problem?
Okay, for safety reasons or medical reasons, napping you can do in the afternoon. but probably no more than about 20 minutes or so. Problem with taking a nap is if you suddenly nap for an hour or so, you have stolen your sleep in advance. So if you have a 1 hour nap at 4 p.m, what's going to happen at 10 o'clock? You're not as tired or as sleepy as you would have been. What are you going to do? You're going to stay up later. You still got to get up at the same time every morning. So napping can throw things out. Try and hold, if there's no reason why you need to nap, try and hold off till bedtime, builds that sleep pressure. Chances are you'll have a better night's sleep by not napping. But if you do need to nap, maybe set an alarm for 20 minutes time.
Got it. Geoff, I need to go off and have a little power nap right now. You must be quite wiped out. You've done really well. We've had you on the front foot for a good hour, and we could have kept going for another hour. We'll have to have you back another time, I think.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to all your listeners for all the great questions. It's been a pleasure to talk about sleep.
Right. Mark Crook saying, and I think hopefully on behalf of all of us, thank you, Geoff. That was an informative, great presentation. It'd be great if we could have meetings of such nature more often. So people want more, basically.
Happy to help. Yeah.
Right.
Great. No, thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. We've just popped a link to a form in the comments section. If you've got a minute, please provide feedback. It really helps us in making the case for sessions like these. If you enjoyed today and you haven't signed up already, please come along. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're covering alcohol, we're covering exercise, and we're covering nutrition. Three great speakers. One of them's me. But today, it was a real pleasure to take a breather and watch Geoff take the hot seat and share lots of great information. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Geoff, you're free to go. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.